210. I can't count backwards. Golden Black Live, Brian Newbert joins us. There's a little basketball game tomorrow night in the state of Indiana. At least for Purdue fans and for Indiana fans, it's a big deal. Purdue IU in Assembly Hall, 8:30. Perfect time for you to be up all night.
Love it.
The Boilermakers, on paper, I would think Purdue will go into this game as a little bit of an underdog. No question about that. Indiana's played 15-0 at home. But what do you see after watching Purdue on Tuesday? And this has been the season that it is, up and down a little bit. But what do you think you'll see tomorrow?
Well, looking at Purdue, I see a team that still can get better, that still hasn't played its best basketball. I think Purdue's got some things still they can shore up defensively. They've had situations still where they've turned the ball over too much, where they've not made plays that have there been made in situations that can really change a game, especially on the road. The Maryland and Michigan games, Purdue had golden opportunities in those games to push out late leads, which obviously would have helped their chances later on. Now, when you're dealing with an animal like Indiana in Assembly Hall, where, as you mentioned, they're 15-0 and they've buzzsawed people by and large this season, Purdue's margin for error is 0. So Purdue's got to play its best basketball. It's got to take advantage of all its opportunities. It's got to leverage its strengths as much as possible, and it's got to minimize its weaknesses as much as possible here. And it can go either way. This is a really interesting game. On paper, they're pretty evenly matched teams, but they're polar opposites.
Yeah.
The matchups for these teams are both ends of the extreme, and there's just no way of knowing how that's going to go. Purdue won in Assembly Hall last year, but they didn't win because of their size. They won because of their deep. They played pretty good defense, and they were able to really break Indiana down off the dribble, do some things that were maybe a little bit atypical of Purdue's MO for winning last year. They didn't shoot the ball well, but they did a lot of things really well. But it wasn't like they overwhelmed Indiana with their size. This year, they have to overwhelm Indiana with their size,
which is a challenge because Thomas Bryant's played well, and he's a freshman. He's really seems to have been. Not that he ever was in a situation where he wasn't, but he's matured certainly this part of the season, so it's going to be an interesting thing.
Yeah, but he's exploitable on defense. At this stage of his development, he's still a very young player. He's not been a good post defender by and large. I know he's had some breakdowns against the dribble in terms of help defense. I think Purdue will try to exploit that. I think Indiana might be better with Thomas Bryant off the floor because when they put Max Bielefeld in the game, he can hang around the top of the three-point arc and present that threat to shoot threes, and we all know what sort of thorn in Purdue's side that's been all year when the other team has a five-man who can shoot and what that does to the whole complexion of Purdue's defense. But Thomas Bryant, obviously, for the first time in a couple of years since Cody Zeller, gives Indiana a credible five-man to match up physically with A.J. Hammonds and Isaac Haas. But he's, like I said, he's not been the best post defender. He's been exploitable in certain ways defensively. So that helps Indiana from a physical standpoint, but I don't think it's an absolute game changer that completely swings the dynamic of this game relative to the past couple.
Yeah, Indiana has been, though they didn't in the first half against Nebraska, I didn't watch all of it, but didn't shoot the ball as well as I recall. But boy, they can light it up, and that will be a dynamic environment, a Saturday night environment in Assembly Hall will make for they were talking about the ticket prices on StubHub, SeatGeek, etc., that are through the roof, and that will be it'll be a every seat taken type event. Purdue fans that are going down to try to buy some tickets will be paying dearly, I think, for that. Purdue in the situation, the emergence of Ryan Klein, or at least the maturity, I guess. I don't know how would you best characterize that? And do you think?
I think he's just got more comfortable. He's gotten better with experience.
Yeah.
I think, of those shooting guards, I think it came down to, okay, who's going to defend? None of them turn the ball over. So, I should say Dakota Mathias and Ryan Klein don't turn the ball over. So that's kind of a wash. But I think it comes down to who's going to defend the best. I think Ryan Klein's tried his hardest. He's been reliable. He's been trustworthy defensively. Dakota Mathias has gotten the flu. That hasn't helped.
Yeah.
His case. Obviously, Kendall Stevens is still off in a little bit of an unknown, a little bit of a gray area. So, Purdue's needed more from Ryan Klein, and I think he's starting to come into his own a little bit. I think he's 7 of 13 from three-point range the last couple games, 3-4 games, whatever it may be. He doesn't turn the ball over. He's good at getting the ball in the post. He's crafty in the sense that he knows how to pass fake, he knows how to shot fake, he just knows how to play.
Yeah.
And not to sound too much like Matt Painter when I say that, but it's true. I think there's a maturity coming out in him too in terms of his game, on top of the fact that he's surviving defensively better than maybe some of his peers can, and he's obviously a shot maker who's starting to make shots. So I think a lot's going right for Ryan Klein now. He is trending upward, obviously.
And he was one that admitted that he knew what he was walking into in Assembly Hall with that with the noise level, and being an Indiana kid from Carmel, that you grow up wanting to be either on one side or the other in this game, just because it's such a great environment. You don't anticipate that he'll be extremely intimidated. He seems to be, based on his comments, somebody that's just looking forward to the opportunity.
I would imagine you don't really know how you're going to deal with it until you have to deal with it. Now he's played at Pittsburgh. Obviously had a great game at Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
He's played at Maryland. Did some positive things at Maryland. Maryland
Great environment.
was absolute hornet's nest. That's the closest thing I think Purdue will see in the Big Ten to playing in Assembly Hall. Purdue was good enough to win that game. They just didn't at the end. So Purdue's fared relatively well in some tests similar to this one. So I mean, I wouldn't expect Purdue to go out there and curl up in the fetal position by any means. I think they'll represent themselves fairly well.
And if I'm counting right, 4 games left in the regular season for Purdue. Mm-hmm. And I misspoke this morning, at least in the Gold and Black report, kind of writing Purdue off of the Big Ten championship. Obviously, Purdue has to win all 4 of its games left, I think, to have any hope, and that would put them at 5 losses. Purdue historically has won a Big Ten championship with 5 losses, but it's interesting that, again, we talked about this last week, Brian, but there are 4 games left, 4 that you could win, 4 that you could lose. I mean, it's still going to be very, very tight coming down the stretch for Purdue.
Purdue's been an inconsistent basketball team, but they've been inconsistent on the road.
Yeah.
For
the most part,
I think we need to draw a delineation there. I thought the Iowa game obviously was just a total collapse. So that's the one half I thought Purdue just didn't show up on its home floor. I thought the second half of the Michigan State game, I thought was more about Michigan State than it was about Purdue. Personally, I know a lot of people you can look at it however you want.
I would tend to agree.
But I think Purdue's been inconsistent on the road, but they've had opportunities. They've been good enough to win these last 2 games, Michigan, Maryland. They just haven't. In those moments, they haven't responded to those moments. They couldn't get the Michigan lead past 6 when they had a bunch of opportunities to do so. Then they couldn't get stops at the end when they needed them, and then they missed a bunch of shots they normally make. So it was like this convergence of stuff that cost you that game. Maryland, I thought they just lost their poise a little bit, took some bad shots. But Purdue's been good enough to put themselves in positions to win these games. They just haven't gotten over the top. So when I say they've been inconsistent on the road, it's not like they're not showing up. It's not like they're playing one good game, one bad game. It's just they haven't been able to finish some of these wins off.
I would love to, as I've said sometimes publicly, I'd like to see Purdue play 40 minutes and then see what happens, and that's what's going to be interesting to see. All right, just a couple minutes left. You did get off the phone with Mike Berghoff. We're not going to the chair of the Purdue Search Committee for the athletic directorship. Just initial impressions. We now are into this for a week. We've heard Morgan Burke talk on Wednesday, and I thought that was interesting in its own right, just in terms of where he seems to be pretty open to whatever happens here down the road, and yet you sense that they're going to ramp this thing up pretty heavily here in the near term.
Well, I think next week is when they first start putting their heads together on the search committee. Search committee might not be finalized either, by the way. They might add some people to it, but they're going to start gathering and talking about what they're looking for and how they're going to go about finding it, and start bringing names together, whatever else, kind of pare things down from there, bring some people in for interviews, talk to various people, whatever the case may be. Probably not going with a search firm. They think this is a job attractive enough where people should come to them instead of them having to go to people. Now, it's not always as cut and dry. There's complications sometimes you need that third party for, but it doesn't sound like right now they're planning to use a search firm. But this is going to be a long process. I mean, this isn't going to happen next week. This just starts now, basically. And this is a process where Purdue's not going to put a timeline on it. They're going to say, we have to get the right person, whether that's next week, whether that's 3 weeks from now, whether that's 3 months from now, whether that's 6 months from now. We just have to get the right person.
Mike Berghoff, the chair of the Board of Trustees and the chair of the Search Committee for the Athletic Directorship, and that's going to be a topic that will be discussed, I'm sure, and a lot here in the next few months. One, going back to Indiana, we had some questions, and sometimes I forget to look at them, but we had a question about going back to the IU game, Brian. Purdue seniors, obviously A.J. Hammonds has been a thorn in Indiana's side, even in a huge Indiana win. He had 30 points, but he's played very well against the Hoosiers over the years. Johnny Hills certainly showed some signs of doing some very good things. Is it as simple as the three seniors having to have big nights? Is that what it takes to win in Bloomington? John Octius, obviously last year was absolutely huge in that win in Bloomington, not just the dunk, but other things. But is that what it takes to get it done down there?
Yeah, I mean, obviously stands to experience that you have to lean on your experienced guys. Did I say stands to experience? Stands to reason.
But I said wins and losses on something that made no sense earlier,
Okay,
so you're okay.
it stands to reason to suggest you have to lean on your more experienced guys, the guys who've been there before. Purdue's got a couple guys who've won in this arena before, who've had a lot of success against Indiana, who haven't been phased, whatever the case may be, by playing in this rivalry game. Those guys are going to have to be good as basketball players and as presences, as leaders. And, A.J. Hammonds is simply, he's been good against Indiana because he's good against a lot of people.
Yeah.
And he's been good against Indiana because he's had a great matchup, because they haven't had anything that can match up with him. Now they're closer to having somebody who can match up with him. But A.J. Hammonds is that much better now, I think, than he was last year and the year before that. So he should be good again. Purdue needs Rafael Davis to be good. I'm of the camp that they don't need him scoring. They just need him being a good player. I know there's the correlation between his scoring and Purdue's success. But I think they're better when he scores, obviously, but I don't think there's anything about what he does that's essential to them being a functional basketball team. I think it's gravy. I don't think they can't win if he's not scoring. Obviously, Johnny Hill is going to have to be solid at worst, because if P.J. Thompson can't play as much as they'd like P.J. Thompson to probably play because of the foot issue, Johnny Hill's going to have to play big minutes, guard Yogi Ferrell, and exist in an environment where you cannot turn the ball over. Because if you turn the ball over, if you make bad decisions, Indiana's in transition, they're making threes, Troy Williams is jumping over the backboard and dunking, and all of a sudden you got all of Assembly Hall,
going crazy,
screaming and blurting obscenities at you, and suddenly, things go sideways on you in a hurry.
And they can, that's for sure. Well, we will find out in about 30 hours from now, I think. It'll be about 10:30 tomorrow night. We'll know how this one turns out. A lot going on and a lot of coverage on goldenblack.com as Brian will burn the midnight oil as he has been doing just about all basketball season. So we'll look forward to our show next week. We'll have another football assistant coach. Matt Rector has gone above and beyond the call of bringing new guys in and have enjoyed both of them. Thanks to Coach Ross Ells and obviously to Coach Dave Shondell for joining us today, and to Brian Newbert, Stacy, Kyle, the whole group. Gordon, thank you guys, and Allie very much for all your help, and of course Cammie as well. We appreciate all you guys do for us. We'll have the archive version up on the site here probably within the next 60 to 90 minutes if you missed part of the show. Really good stuff today, and we look forward to, if you get the chance to watch it, to do that. So thanks to our sponsors as well, XXX, State Farm Agent Trent Johnson, John Basham, and the good folks at Basham Rental and Hilton Garden Inn for all they do for us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week on Golden Black Live.